The Gut Smart, Gene Smart way to weight loss, vitality, and longevity. Thank you for being here and for being someone who cares about your health. You'll be learning about the benefits of the body ecology way of life and discover the essential body ecology course and our most essential body ecology products. First of all, let's talk about the popular diets that are out in the world today. There's paleo, and there's Whole30. There's pagan, which is actually a term that Dr. Mark Hyman coined, which when he put together paleo and vegan. There is ketogenic, which is a high-fat diet, and there's the vegan or vegan, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And the vegan diet could possibly be the most unhealthy of all of them because a lot of people are doing it and they don't really know nutrition very well, so they're leaving out some very important nutrients. What do they all have in common? Well, not all of them. Let's leave out the vegan diet, but all the rest of them are low in sugar, which is a real plus. They usually encourage lots of veggies, which again is a plus. They do emphasize quality proteins, a plus, and good fats. Good, that's a good plus. And they should hopefully encourage the eating of fermented foods, another positive, wonderful thing that they do. But, however, they all ignore the principle of uniqueness. And the vegan diet is usually not very successful, as I mentioned, because B12 and carnitine, these are some really important nutrients. I don't know that they encourage fermented foods, and a lot of the foods, particularly the prepared foods, have dates and agar, a lot of sugar in them, and then a lot of nuts and seeds, which are very high in oxalates. With the exception of the vegans, they all eliminate food groups that cause cravings, that disrupt blood sugar, that damage the gut, and that feed candidiasis and Lyme disease. So that's really good about all of them. Because they do this, they all help your body heal and recover from the negative physical and psychological effects of food choices. They all help you reset your eating habits, which is excellent. Because I think many of us get on into a hole, really, and you're sort of over and over again every day, sort of having something bad, and then you finally make a commitment to do one of these diets, and it helps you reset those eating habits so that you're now on a good road, a good track. They were setting your relationship with food and the downstream physical and psychological effects of the food choices that you've been making. But is there a perfect diet? Well, according to body ecology, the way we think is that the diet must be personalized and it must have an awareness of digestion. It has to have an awareness of gut health. Should be rich in fiber and plant food. Should have a small amount of healthy fats, not a great deal. And it should be low in sugars, and it should not be processed in any way. So fresh and whole. The perfect diet should be a diet that's enhanced with a lot of beneficial microbes, including bacillus bacteria, bifidus, lactobacillus. You want to eat foods that are bringing a lot of these healthy microbes into your gut. Really, blood type. I know some people don't think the blood type diet is valuable and should be given any credit, but there's more and more research coming out that blood type does matter. And you'll be hearing more about that in this future, as a matter of fact. So we believe, and I have taught this for 25 years or so, that the perfect diet must also be respectful of blood type. I've been asking people their blood type for years, decades actually now. And I have found that it makes a big difference if a person's an O or an A. O's in particular do really seem to need more animal protein, and they can seem to take in more fats for the most part. You have to take into consideration other things like their genes and how is their liver and gallbladder doing, but can it handle those fats? Are they producing enough bile, for example? Blood type A's have more trouble with digestion. They don't often run out of, they become depleted in stomach acid rather early, and they need help with digestion, and they tend to have trouble with protein and fats because they don't have an enzyme in their small intestine called alkaline phosphatase. So I always love to know someone's blood type, and It tells me right away, some important clues about what I can do to help them, steer them in the right direction to make the diet work, whatever diet they're on, work better for them. The perfect diet needs to be alkaline forming, which means it would be rich in minerals, and it would have bioactives, which are molecules in the foods they have other names like polyphenols, for example. They are really critical, particularly as you learn more and more about genes. Those are those bioactives, those molecules in the food that really talk to the genes, our genes, and express them. And so this is so alkaline forming and rich in minerals and rich in these bioactives that are so, so important to talk to our genes. So the perfect diet really should be calming, full of foods that calm down the nervous system and at the same time build energy. There are foods that can do that, particularly those slow release carbs, which I know right now at the moment are out of fashion. That's with the paleo and the Whole30. Basically they completely pan carbohydrates. And yet the slow release carbs are very, very important for some people. And they don't sleep well, they don't feel good, they don't have energy without them. The perfect diet also should have recipes for properly preparing the food so that they're easy to digest and also delicious. The diet that you're eating, the meals that you're planning, and you should enjoy them. And we believe in body ecology, that we have to honor the principle of food combining. It's not always possible to do that, particularly with children, but as much as you can do it, it makes a big difference because it takes the burden off of digestion. If you properly combine your meals and they digest easily, it takes a big burden off the digestive tract. The perfect diet should be nutrient dense and have a variety of foods. As a matter of fact, the more variety you have in your diet, the more variety of microbes you're going to have in your gut, because those microbes come in to digest the foods that we're eating. So if you're having a very diverse diet with a lot of vegetables and particularly plant foods and all, then you're going to actually have more microbes and a more diversity of microbes in your gut. So the perfect diet really has to nourish that microbiome. It should be gluten-free. I think there's enough information out there right now that the type of food that that's sprayed, and the foods that have gluten in them, the flour products and so on that are also sprayed with glyphosate, they're not foods that we should be putting into our body. Yes, some people have genes that absolutely indicate that they're going to be very sensitive and react to the gluten and even get a very inflamed gut. But the rest of us that don't have those genes, the gluten that we're eating today is very inflammatory in the gut. So the diet should be gluten-free. And you may not know this, but if you have candidiasis, a systemic infection, it's a protein. The yeast, the candidiasis it's the infection. It's the name for an infection where you have yeast growing in your body, and those yeast are a protein, and they happen to look very close, almost identical, really, to the same protein. That's the gluten protein. So your immune system, which is always trying very hard to keep us alive, will react to the gluten very strongly if you have candidiasis. So that's just another reason, really, for avoiding gluten. So the perfect diet really should dampen down or conquer a yeast infection. You can't completely get rid of a yeast infection, but you can get it to the point down so that the immune system has a really good grasp on it and it's not causing a problem. This is true for viruses, like the herpes virus, for example. You may never have any problem if you bring the immune system up and make it strong, and then it's able to keep these viruses and bacteria that we carry in our body and this yeast that almost everybody lives with today. Keeping it under control is the job of the immune system, but we've got to support the immune system in doing that, and the perfect diet should be very mindful of that. That's another reason why the vegan diet, the way most people are doing it, doesn't work, because they have too much sugar and they're actually feeding their yeast infection. The perfect diet should build your immune system for all the reasons I just said, and then if you're nourishing your microbiome, you are going to be building your immune system. And that's the key, too, to controlling candidiasis. And the perfect diet really should have fermented foods, because those are the foods that bring this wonderful diversity of microbes into the gut. I've been teaching this for years about fermented vegetables, the way we make them. We actually put a starter, we sell a package of starter that you can put in with your vegetables, and it increases tremendously the diversity and the number of microbes that are actually in every single spoonful of your fermented vegetables. So they're great foods, and everybody should have them really from the very beginning of life. We encourage our moms to put dropperfuls of the coconut kefir, fermented coconut water, into their baby's mouth just a day or so after they're born. Our moms are eating fermented foods through the pregnancy, so they will also take the juice of the fermented vegetables and dilute that and put the dropperful of that into the baby's mouth. And of course, they've never had anything like that, so they make funny faces, but they do grow up not caring about sugar and loving the sour taste. And it's a great thing if you can start a child off early in life with no desire for sugar. There are some times when people can't do fermented foods, like if they have SIBO, or if they have a big reaction to, they've been eating a lot of foods that are high in histamine, and they're having histamine reactions. Some of us, and this is a genetic thing really, are born with, say, a small bucket where we can only hold just a little bit of foods high in histamine, and some of us have a bigger bucket. So we can obviously eat more of them without overflowing that bucket. But if you've been eating a lot of high histamine foods and not realizing that you are, initially you want to stop eating all fermented foods and other histamine foods. That includes beer and wine and kombucha. And there's you can download a list of the foods high in histamine and then go off of those for a couple of weeks. Then, of course, you want to add back in some foods that are very valuable, and that's where eating the fermented vegetables are essential, really, because you've got to establish that immune system and build that inner ecosystem, that microbiome, and fermented foods are just essential for doing that. But SIBO also, that's when you have some kind of microbe. It could be a good one or a bad one, but growing in the small intestine where it isn't supposed to be there. And so you're going to be reacting to foods that have lactic acid, like for example, acidophilus. However, bifidus and the bacillus that we have like in our probiotic protein shake, those are perfectly fine to have if you have SIBO. So back in 1990, I began writing a book, and it was published in 1994 called The Body Ecology Diet. And it's still a bestseller today on Amazon and under the category of, best-selling in books in candidiasis. It's pretty amazing that it sells better today than it did 25 years ago. But my goal has always been to change the way the world eats. And little by little, we're chipping away at that. And of course, a lot of people have joined in today and are also spreading the word and teaching a lot of great information. So there's no reason today why people would be in the dark anymore, because it's just great information out there. I guess in many ways, it's also confusing to people because there's so much out there, which is why I hope that you'll find yourself over in our camp more and more, because what we've been teaching for a really long time is pretty much the truth. And over all these years, what I wrote in that book decades ago, still is true today. But the Body Ecology Diet, that's the name of the book. And in the book, I actually write about the diet to follow if you have candidiasis, because most people do. And I talked about the importance of eliminating gluten and also of being on a sugar-free diet, basically. But that's the first time anyone ever the world was introduced to the concept of the inner ecosystem, or the microbiome. That was in 1994. So 12 or 15 years later, the concept of the microbiome began to catch on. They invented the word microbiome, and it's just the hottest thing in health and medicine today. I always wondered, why did it back in the days when I first began teaching people about it, I always wondered, how are people missing this extremely important world that's living inside of our gut? And of course, today there's so much research, and it's quite fascinating. You could just get lost in it about what these tiny little alchemists inside of us are doing all the time. But so the Body Culture Diet really isn't just a diet; it's really a way of life. I like to say it's a system of health and healing. And there are recommended foods to eat. There are foods to avoid, of course, like sugar and gluten. But the most important thing is that what you eat changes based on your current needs. And I mean current needs. Like if you're 16 or 26 or 36, but someday you'll be 66, well, you probably change the way you're eating. Actually, this may surprise you, but as people get older, they need more protein, and yet they can't digest animal protein. So they have to look for ways to take in more protein, and yet at the same time make that protein more digestible. And that's where something like a fermented protein shake can be very valuable. Broths, and particularly amino acid broths, where you don't necessarily put the bones in there, but you've got this, you're making a stock, say, from the actual meat, and they're getting the amino acids, but yet very easy to digest, and again, balanced off with a lot of vegetables. Body ecology is not a diet. It's a way of life or a system of health and healing because it's based on seven universal laws. There's the principle of uniqueness, the principle of expansion and contraction. You would know that law, but if you study Chinese medicine, you would know the terms yin and yang. But those terms are a little complicated for Americans to remember which one's the yin and which one's the yang. So I actually, describe that principle because remember, these are universal laws. They've been here since the beginning of the creation of the planet. And so, things expand and they contract. And foods that we eat cause our body to expand or contract. Like salt is very contracting. If you ate a lot of it, you get real thirsty and contracted. Stress is contracting, for example. And yet some things cause the body to expand. People smoke because it helps them open up and relax. They come home and they drink, wine or have a drink of liquor or something because their body, it helps them open up and expand. And so do that too much and you get in trouble. But that's the principle of balance or the principle of expansion and contraction. There's the principle of acid and alkaline. If you eat a lot of sugar, if you're taking drugs, I'm talking about even medicinal drugs and recreational drugs, those push your body into the acidic range, and then all kinds of health problems ensue. We want to keep our body ever so slightly alkaline, and you do that by eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of dark green leafy vegetables, root vegetables. You can tell the difference when your body's in balance and it is slightly more alkaline. You really feel the difference. One of my the most important principle, and one of my favorite principles, the principle of uniqueness, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. The principle of cleansing is very important too, of course, but our body's always cleansing at all times. It was created to cleanse. I'll get into that later on in different parts of our little series here. There's the principle of food combining, where you you don't put your proteins with your starches, basically. That makes a big difference too, again, as I mentioned before, in digestion, but also in aging. And there's the principle of 80-20 and the principle of step-by-step. So I'm going to go into step-by-step a little bit more in just a few minutes. Like all the other popular diets out there, Body Ecology's recommended diet, this is consistent no matter how we change it and alter it for you. All the other diets are low in sugar, and they have lots of veggies, quality proteins, good fats, and they encourage the eating of fermented foods. I've been encouraging fermented foods since I brought them into the country decades ago, and believe it, it's hard to believe this now because there are fermented foods everywhere in the health food store, but that wasn't true a couple of decades ago. There were none in our country. There was out in California. It was considered kind of hippie food, one company making yogurt. But now, of course, yogurt, I think yogurt's probably one of the most popular breakfast foods in the country and the world today. But so it's hard to believe it wasn't even no one ate yogurt back in those days. I do remember my grandmother drinking buttermilk, actually. So they were around, but they weren't very popular by the time I got on the health scene. And so body ecology is really based on the 7 principles, as I mentioned. Now, it has a lot of benefits. It establishes and heals the gut. It builds a strong immune system and cleanses the body on a very strong cellular level, and it balances out hormones. It helps conquer yeast infection. We are very focused on creating healthy, beautiful babies and preventing autism. Believe it or not, autism can absolutely be prevented, and it is being prevented if you teach parents what to do before they even conceive a child, and certainly what to do as soon as the baby's born. That child will not become autistic. So the body ecology way of life is going to help you maintain an ideal weight, and it certainly will prevent and slow down the aging process so that you age very well. Of course, we can't stop, aging altogether, but you can age so well that you don't even feel like you're aging. You don't have the usual symptoms that people think are normal part of aging. We created a diagram or a sketch, really, of how simple the body ecology way of eating is. It shows that 80% of what you're going to eat is your ocean vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, and then also, well, of course, that would be vegetables from the land, vegetables from the ocean too, but also be sure to include a lot of herbs. Herbs are wonderful. The more we learn about genes and the foods that express the genes in a positive way, herbs come in a big way and play an important role. Again, as I mentioned, the bioactives, these molecules in foods, they are expressing the genes and turning them on. The good genes, they turn them on. And so having a diet that's rich in fiber would be your ocean vegetables, your non-starchy your root vegetables, and your green leafy vegetables, and your herbs too. Of course, we want people to drink 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, more if you're even very, very active. We don't think actually because of the different, yeast and things that are going on happening in people's body, eating a lot of fruit is not a smart move today. If you have a thyroid problem, you don't want to start your day off with sweet fruits. And when we do recommend some fruits, but they're very sour, like lemons and limes and grapefruit. And they should be eaten alone on an empty stomach because fruits digest very quickly. And if you eat them, let's say you were going to have a meal and then you had an apple at the end of the meal, like I've seen people do. Well, that apple gets hung up in there with the rest of the food, which is going to take about 2 or 3 hours to digest. And the apple only needs 30 minutes to digest, so it's going to start fermenting right inside of your body in your digestive tract. So it causes a lot of gas and bloating, and that's why we recommend that fruit should be sour and they should be eaten alone. So also you'll notice on the diagram here, we've got the cultured foods like the fermented vegetables, fermented coconut kefir. Fats and oils, of course, are a very important part of a diet, but you don't eat them in huge quantities, and there are certain things to consider. Genes, for example, and, can you even digest those fats and oils? That'll tell you how much to eat, but of course the quality oils are very important. And 20%, you'll notice, is animal proteins, starchy vegetables, grain-like seeds, and protein fat. So what would an example of a protein fat be? Well, that's kefir, milk kefir, or yogurt. Those are protein fats. An avocado is a protein fat. Nuts and seeds are protein fat. So you want to keep, you want to have a large quantity of those. If you're getting ready to plan a meal, it's particularly if it's your evening meal, that's a really good time to have starchy vegetables like maybe a butternut squash soup, or to have your grain-like seeds like quinoa or millet, along with 80% vegetables, ocean vegetables. You could even have non-starchy vegetables with starchy vegetables, and the grain-like seeds, they go well together too. So the diagram pretty much simplifies things. You'll see it's actually pretty easy to do, the body ecology way of life and the diet. But one of the things for the last several years is that I've been studying nutritional genomics and getting really into the genes and the molecules in the food that express those genes. And I've been so excited because for years and years and years, I've said to people, look, we're all unique and there isn't a diet for everybody. You have to find the diet that works for you. And you can, because your body lets you know when a food works for it or not. And if it's not working, it lets you know, and so we are pretty thrilled, really, because we find out that we have a gut smart and gene smart way of life and a gut smart, gene smart diet. So we do take in consideration a person's genetic needs. That's the principle of uniqueness, the principle I've been teaching for decades. And that's why I love the fact that paleo and Whole30 have become popular, because it's getting people off of sugar, steering them in the right direction. But this principle of uniqueness is so critical that really you have to find the diet that's just right for you, and it's not hard to do that. One of the principles, the principle of step by step, is just an absolutely essential principle to know. It's the reason I think a lot of people aren't getting well, because they don't follow this principle. And this is this principle in the universe about time. And so when you're getting ready to do something like become well or lose weight or get pregnant and have a healthy baby, you're going to have to start somewhere. So where do you start if you want to get well? If you want to lose weight, for example? Well, there's 4 things you've got to be focused on doing. And your first step to wellness, and that is create energy, correct digestion, conquer the infections in your body, like candidiasis and Lyme disease. And the same diet for conquering candidiasis works for conquering Lyme disease as well, too. So you want to create energy, correct digestion, conquer infections, and cleanse out the toxins. The principle of food combining, I just want to bring that up one more time, is if someone has fantastic digestion, they may not want to do it. But most people have a sensitive digestive tract today. They may have leaky gut. They're trying to build they want their digestive tract to be stronger and healthier. And so the principle of food combining is really valuable to know. And it's quite simple, really. You just do not put your protein and starches together. That means that you wouldn't have a hamburger, for example, or a sandwich where you're going to have, like in a hamburger, you've got your beef and you between 2 pieces of bread, or sandwich, you've got cheese and turkey and whatever between 2 pieces of bread, or you're having rice with chicken and rice, for example, chicken with French fried potatoes, just the way we eat all the time. It may take about a week or 2 at the most to get yourself used to this principle of not combining starches with proteins. But once you do, you'll probably never go back. I mean, maybe occasionally here and there you'll not follow the principle, but you'll find that when you do follow it, your digestion's so much better. You don't notice the food in your stomach digesting. It's smoother. And then the other thing that most people don't know is that it's great for weight loss. And I've always been amazed that programs like Jenny Craig and so on don't tell people to do this, because it will help speed up their weight loss significantly. And also, over the years, I've noticed that people who do follow the principle of food combining age really well. So we're very focused on a healthy gut, understanding the inner ecosystem, the use of fermented foods and beverages, doing food combining, and then also preparing the foods in a way so they can be easily digested. For example, proteins should not be overcooked, because the more you cook them, the harder they are to digest. We do very much recommend the use of digestive enzymes. Some people absolutely need to take them with every meal because they just are not producing enough enzymes to digest the protein, for example. And then we've got the 80-20 rules, and those are great. It means you don't fill up your stomach. You sit down for your meal and you eat until you're 80% full, and you've got 20% left for your digestive enzymes to work. And the other thing is, the other part of that rule is that you sit down, you prepare to eat, you take your plate out, you start putting food on your plate, you would have 20% only in, say, animal protein, so a small piece of fish or whatever protein you're eating, chicken, and then most of the rest of the meal is in vegetables, like a salad, or it could be a vegetable soup to go along with that, or steamed many vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, such as broccoli and asparagus and cauliflower and green beans. And there's just a huge long list of things that would go with that protein. So that's the 80-20 rules. And really, again, it helps tremendously in how you end up digesting that food. So health begins in the gut. And unfortunately, that's where disease begins too. And most people are walking around today with gas and bloating or much more serious things happening in their gut, leaky gut, Crohn's colitis, because we haven't really taught people how important it is from the very beginning of life and appearance. If they were just mindful of setting that inner ecosystem in place and following these rules and feeding their children right, we wouldn't have the digestive gut problems that we have today. Years ago, I was thrilled to see that once the word got out about the microbiome and people were beginning to focus, scientists were focusing and doing lots of research. Finally, a few years later, the whole concept begins to show up in some major magazines, like Scientific American wrote a whole article on how these microbes in our gut might influence our mood. They weren't really making a commitment to that, but they might influence our mood. Well, it turns out as time passed on, they have a huge impact on our well-being and our mood. And the word kefir is a Turkish word. It's where kefir originally sprang from. It means feel good in Turkish. And that's what happens when people eat fermented foods, is that it has a huge impact. It's loaded with the beneficial microbes, and it's having a huge impact on our mood and our feeling of well-being. I've had the privilege of teaching this information to thousands of people all over the world. And I know the one thing that most people ask for is a simple place to begin, a place they can start to make changes in their lives. One step toward how they can begin to heal their gut, something they can do immediately to change their health and their family's health. So to help you get started, I can't wait to tell you about a new product that we have here at Body Ecology. It's a protein powder, basically, and it has amazing ingredients in it. There are two power players. There's protein. It's been pre-digested, so it's a combination of pea and rice protein. And when you put pea and rice together, you get a perfect complement of amino acids. As we get older, people need more protein than ever. And everybody needs protein, but most of us really are eating it and not digesting it. So the protein in our shake is pre-digested. Also, the other power player is a blend of probiotics. So it's called the Body Ecology's Probiotic Protein Shake. The probiotics are really special because there are 4 of them. They're bacillus bacteria, and they can do many wonderful things in the gut, including reprogram the gut. The research shows that they can actually heal leaky gut within 30 days. A lot of people have a leaky gut, they don't even know it. So what they're eating food, they're reacting to that food, healthy food even, because they have that gut lining that needs to be sealed. So these bacteria are great at doing that. We have some other ingredients in there too, of course. We have minerals, so it's alkalizing, and we have great fiber blend. Now, I didn't leave anything out of it, basically, and I'm very excited about it. It's great for kids. It tastes fantastic. It's without a doubt the best tasting vegan protein shake on the market. So please give it a try. Simply go to bodyecology.com/start.